about skateboarding, but you're just not very good at jumping up and down on your favorite piece of wood. Crap skateboarding, crap skateboarding podcast.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But Ian, this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Hello and welcome to the Crap Skateboarding podcast, a weekly dive into skateboarding for the average skater, hosted by myself, James.
And me, Jack.
In this podcast, 2 distinctly average skaters will try to cover pretty much everything you might want to know about skating, from total beginners to midlife crisis shredders.
Each week, we will be discussing a range of exciting topics regarding skateboarding in these uncertain times.
And this week, Jack, our topic is...
Drum roll, please. Skateboarding and punk rock!
And punk music. we hadn't actually finalised what we were going to say there, had we?
We got the gist of it. Well, it could be both, it's fine. So this week, we're going to be talking about the connection between skateboarding and punk rock that exists for so many people. And we are joined this week by Brad Sherman. Now, Brad and I know each other from about, 10 to 12 years ago from back in Plymouth in the United Kingdom, where we were both involved in the punk rock scene back there. Brad, it's lovely to have you on.
Hello. Is it
Hey,
that
buddy.
long ago? Is it that long ago?
Well, yeah, I'm 30 now. It's terrible. I don't think
I'm 31.
So when we started, just for some background, we know each other because Brad used to play in a band called the Blowouts back in Plymouth, a punk rock band. And when I was a student in Plymouth, I, for fun, definitely not for money because there was none, used to put on punk rock shows in Plymouth. And we know each other through that. And I started, that was called Opposite Number Promotions. Me and my friends Josh and Jake did it, and I was 19 when we started doing that. So yeah, 11, 12 years ago. Okay. Yeah, it's been a while. Okay. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Feel old yet?
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's good to have you on, buddy.
Thanks, man. It's good to see some faces.
Also, and I feel like I'm just drinking back at the White Rabbit again, chatting to you. It's really nice. It's been a long time. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, just for that. Brad, plug Gunderson. Just do a bit. Talk about. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think you should, because I'm assuming you're going to want to play again. Are you going to be playing again as a group when this is over? Is that the plan?
Yeah, man. So yeah, we never had any plans for the band really. I mean, you know Jack from Blowouts. He played drums in Blowout. And our friend Lee, who used to take pictures when we played in Russell Camp Drive and when we played in Blowout, it's always been a really close friend of ours, exceptional photographer, plays bass. And when we used to play, sorry, my cat's just come in and started yelling at me. We were playing in Blowouts for years. We were touring and it was all going great, and we released a record in 2016 or something. But because we all moved to different cities and it kind of just fell apart, but me and Jack carried on playing together just as a twofer, and then Lee was like, I haven't played bass in 14 years. Can I come and jam? And he did, and it kind of fell into place and it was cool. So we formed Gunderson and we played a bunch of shows, done a couple of short tours and weekenders and things.
Could you tell us, Brad, a little bit? I know it's a weird thing to do, to ask of you. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in punk and maybe skateboarding? And just let us know a little bit about yourself.
I definitely found, and I've been thinking about this all day because I honestly can't really remember, but I'm fairly certain that I started skateboarding before I knew music like that really existed. And I did because I suppose my parents have always, my dad was big into Beatles and Rolling Stones and things, but certainly not punk rock as we would listen to it today. But I definitely started skateboarding first. I remember having like a fishboard in my parents' garage that I always used to kind of mess around on. That was my sister's, but I would try and balance on it in the garden and things. But I think just one of my friends who now lives in Australia is or was an extremely good BMXer, and his parents used to be professional trialers, like in cars with the big roll cages on them. They got like mud banks and roll and things.
Blimey.
So they were their family was quite invested in extreme sports, and him and his brother were big into bikes. And I think it was probably the fact that he had an older brother, was listening to Nirvana, and Sam, the friend that I'm talking about, discovered Nirvana, kind of showed them to me, and we grew up through school together and had this kind of band that we started to listen to. But it was very much after we found BMXs, so I used to dirt jump. I probably knew about Green Day and Blink-182, bands like that from the radio, and it would have been I think it probably would have been, in fact I think it was someone wearing a NoFX hoodie at a skate park that we were at that I clocked and wanted to know what it was. And I remember buying Pump Up the Volume in HMV with a voucher that I got for a birthday, taking it home, listening to it and absolutely hating it. And it took me about 3 or 4 listens through probably before I started to kind of get some of it. And after that, I think I found The Offspring, and I just got completely hooked. And I started playing guitar in 2001. I would have been 11-ish. So about 2001, I picked up a guitar mainly because I was into the Bill and Ted films, and we listened to Nirvana, and I'd found The Offspring, I'd found NoFX, still liked Blink, still listened to Green Day, and I started kind of discovering bands through that, whilst getting better on a skateboard, I suppose, because that's what all my friends were doing, and that's what we kind of brought us all together and why we made friends in the first place. And just kind of intertwined the two, and it just carried on from there. It's just that was my whole childhood, really.
I think you just name dropped the 2 kind of like prototypical skate punk bands, didn't you? NoFX and The Offspring, which kind of like synonymous with the genre of skate punk. When those 2 things meet, I mean, it works. Skateboarding and that.
It works.
Yeah.
It works so well.
And it was not 1999. I looked it up earlier that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 came out, and that would have probably been the first time that I heard Bad Religion and bands like Goldfinger and probably Dead Kennedys, Suicidal Tendencies, and bands like that. It's kind of and then because I didn't get heavily into bands like Dead Kennedys until I was sort of closer to 16-17, but that would have been the first time I was introduced to it, and probably a couple of years later after the game came out was probably when I played it. And started getting into all of those sorts of things whilst playing a skateboarding game. I mean, it's a tried and tested, it's a tested formula, isn't it?
It is,
I think most people our age have a very similar story to tell. So everything you've just said.
You are part of a 30-something-year-old now cliche, essentially, because that is what has happened.
I'm well aware, and I made peace with it a long time ago as well.
Oh yeah,
because certainly the Tony Hawk's 1 soundtracks and the 2 soundtracks with Lagwagon, Pennywise, NoFX, Bad Religion, they were more heavily focused towards the skate punk genre than the later games were, which diversified out a little bit more. So all those bands were very condensed into those first two games. So that immediate exposure to suddenly a load of big names in that sort of punk, speed punk genre immediately became associated with skateboarding, didn't they?
Mind you, the separation of church and skate on Pug, that always stuck out to me. Yeah. Do you remember? So really interesting. I haven't written anything about this. We are like off topic, but you mentioned your experience with Pump Up the Volume, the NoFX album. And my experience is so similar. So I was about what was I, like 11, 12, and I was playing in a ska band. I was a saxophone player, and I was playing in like my first band was a ska band, and a guy in the band lent me Pump Up the... Well, it's Jake. Jake lent me, you know, Jake. Who, his mum was really into her punk music. You know, she was a first wave punk. And she was, you know,
brilliant.
Kept listening. And they lent me Pump Up the Volume. And I listened to it, and I just, I didn't get it at all. Because I could think was, the drums were way faster than everything else. So the drums, it's blast beat drumming, and the vocals were kind of slow and melodic. And I was thinking, this doesn't make any sense. Why are the drums going so much faster? They're singing this like sweet song with these drums that are just like they're for a different song. And I just remember really thinking, like, I was used to Green Day and Blink and thinking, I don't get it. It feels like two things jammed together. And then I think out of I didn't listen to it for a while, but I think they never asked for the CD back. I probably still owe them that CD. It's probably Jake's. And I remember just returning to it thinking, okay, well, maybe I've missed something. And it's my favourite record now. I don't know, it was a real turning point.
I would say I recently got a copy of So Long Thanks for All the Shoes on 12-inch that I've been looking for so long. And Specialist Subject recently got it in stock, so I just snapped it up immediately because it's my favourite. It's my favourite of their records. I think it's perfect.
Oh, it is. It is. Do you know what is perfect? And like so much like Smash, the album by Offspring, which James mentioned that Offspring are like similar. That, I mean, Offspring went and did all sorts, love it or hate it. They kind of, you know, did what they did. But Smash is a perfect skate punk record in terms of what we're talking about. That it's nasty and it's fast. And I remember that. Yeah, being the first time I think that I can remember hearing something and thinking, I love this because it isn't perfect. Like, if this was perfect, it wouldn't be as good. For some reason, this just being kind of brilliant, but a bit messy and a bit feral was... Yeah. And it matches how we want to skate, I suppose. That's why, that's how I feel when I'm falling off my board. You know, whether I look like it is a different thing, but...
It's weird because Wow.
So I've done a little bit of research. I was trying to think, this thing that we love, where did this all begin? And as far as I can tell, don't call me out on this because I might be wrong, but the first band that referred to itself as skate punk, which is now just such a common throwaway term, was Faction, which featured Steve Caballero, was the bass player or the guitarist, I'm not sure which, in the Faction. And they wrote the song Skate and Destroy, which is obviously so synonymous with skateboarding in general and the Bones Brigade videos. It was always the intro song on the Bones Brigade videos. Are there any other, similarly, I mean, are there any other bands or songs that, due to appearances in videos or any other association, that you just immediately associate with skateboarding? And again, I mean, this is for both of you, we're all just talking about this, but...
I would say, again, anything that's on those first Tony Hawk game soundtracks.
Yeah.
Because...
So essentially you're talking sort of Millencolin, Dead Kennedys, Bad Religion. Yeah. So song-wise, No Cigar, Police Truck.
Big Bang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think the term skate punk, I guess it troubles me a little bit because I think that Steve Caballero probably just coined that term himself because he was a skateboarder in a band. I don't think, and I think the Tony Hawk game probably gave way to that a little bit as well and kind of created this skate punk thing, mainly because skateboarders were listening to punk, and anyone that played in a punk band probably skateboarded, because it's not a British thing at all, because obviously the UK had a very grimy kind of start to its punk rock scene, as did the States, and Berlin and sort of all around Europe had this very grimy kind of punk rock thing. It was its own thing, and it was, you know, there was quite a lot of drugs, it was a lot of booze, playing these dirty, sweaty underground clubs. Yeah, bands like the Ramones, the Clash, and the Sex Pistols came along, and things like that. And I think this Southern California and sort of greater LA area, I think, was probably where, because the surf culture was there, which led into the skateboard culture, and then all these punk bands like Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, and Suicidal Tendencies, and bands like that started popping up. Most of them were kind of on the outskirts of, they're sort of the outskirt culture, aren't they? So they were all surfing and skateboarding, and then they were playing this music. So I think that kind of, it's skate and punk, because that's the two things they were doing kind of smashed together. So I don't know whether it's a genre of music. I think it's more of a Southern Californian kind of
I think
culture.
At this point, I think it's I agree with you. I think at the time, I think it's almost like, you know, how we talk about proto-punk, it's almost like a retroactive thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also think it's really it's quite evident. I think when you say that, you know exactly the kind of punk rock you're referring to. So, you know, if you talk to people
it's a
that
very
you like
particular
punk, that needs lots of questions. Whereas if you say, oh, it's you know, skate punk, they immediately you think, okay, you think that thrash metal influenced melodic punk rock. So that really fast, lots of melody, a little bit nasty. And you're right, it's surf rock influence. You talk about the surfing link as well. I suppose you've got those like wailing guitars and a bit more soloing, and you know, I think at the time, I don't know, I wasn't there, but yeah, you're right.
Surf rock's inherently gentler, isn't it? It's interesting that the sort of surf rock at the time was inherently gentler and more sort of approachable and more sort of mainstream friendly, radio friendly than the skate punk was. It was gnarlier, it was harder than the surf rock at the time. That surf rock kind of gave way to that skate punk, and obviously you don't hear that kind of classic surf rock quite so much anymore. You do, certainly more niche bands, but it's not so widespread as the skate punk is. Also ingrained in the culture skate punk is. And around that sort of same time, I think the skate culture split into two camps, didn't it? So it sort of split into the surf, sort of the skate punk camp, and then it split into the West Coast hip hop camp. And you've got those two genres that are both very closely associated with skateboarding at the time.
Yeah. As reflected in the Tony Hawk soundtrack.
Well, yes.
Beautiful snapshot of that. So why do you think then you're talking about this like being more of a culture, which is absolutely true, you know, I guess punk fans are precocious, and I am one. Yeah. But I suppose everyone's very precious and particular. Everyone defines it in different ways, which I think is why I'm very careful when I talk about the kind of punk music I like. I almost feel it just saves time to direct people to a particular thing, so that I don't get lots of old people lecturing me about Stiff Little Fingers, even though I like them too. So why do you think then there is, in terms of the culture, the skateboarding, why do you feel that there is that connection between the two? Why do you think they are so closely intertwined? You said that, you know, in Southern California, maybe that's what the skateboarders were listening to, and that they were so well integrated. Why do you think that is? What is it about the two subcultures, which they both arguably are, skateboarders and punk rock are both subcultures? Why do they associate so closely together?
Well, they're both countercultural, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It's the outskirts. It's the outskirt sport, isn't it? Although
the establishment music, the establishment sport. Yeah.
Although skateboarding is currently sort of gearing up to be in the Olympics this year, it was never back then. I mean, arguably it went more mainstream when people our age started finding out about it, because you had games like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, and things like that. Yeah. I mean, before that, you're talking like like you just said, Jack. I wasn't around. I don't know, but I can take a stab at the fact that in the 80s, it would have been, like you said, James, like an anti-establishment kind of thing to do, and you probably would have latched on to those kids in your school who did that, and just I don't know, you'd be like, fuck yeah, I want to do that. I want to throw myself down something and kind of I want to do. I want to go and get fucked at a show and throw beer on myself, and then I want to go throw myself down a set of stairs or up a ramp with my friends, and then start a fire. Like it seems like they go hand in hand, you know. And I guess it was like a rebellion thing, I suppose. It's just a sport that's on the fringe, a music genre that's on the fringe, and you know. Yeah. I think it just go hand in hand.
Rebellious, wasn't it? And teenagers are a lot of teenagers are inherently rebellious. Certainly people on sort of 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, they were breaking into backyard pools to go skate, you know? It was that kind of time when they were breaking into parking lots, breaking into places to go and skate the pools and the stairs and the car parks and things. And those kind of individuals who are attracted to that sort of rebellious aspect of skateboarding, because it was rebellious at the time. If you wanted to skate a pool, you had to break into somebody's backyard, you know? Those people that are attracted to that kind of rebellious aspect of skateboarding are going to be attracted to the music that makes their parents hate. Yeah, and it's not being played on the radio.
Also, you know? Mate, in the same vein, like you're talking about like breaking into backyard pools, and this is like how you skate. You know, if you wanted to do that, that's what you did, and it's true. I guess that goes hand in hand with the kind of DIY ethic of, you know, like shows and basement shows and like garden parties and things that like punk bands would be playing. You know, they wouldn't be playing large venues.
If a venue wouldn't put you on, you'd go make your own show. Yeah. I remember the first shows I ever played was there was a little venue called the Reese Centre in Plimpton, in Plymouth, and they put 11-year-old me and my band on because someone's dad that I knew wanted to give his son like a platform for his band to play his music. So these shows just became notorious, and all these, like, you know, they weren't crazy, they're a bunch of 11-year-old kids, but we had somewhere to play music to people who were to other kids who were interested in listening to music. And then we put on shows in our school. You know, we played in the lecture theatre, and to other kids in our year that either wanted to hear it or didn't want to hear it, who were there to take the piss or
in other bands.
Or in other bands.
That's what we did.
That's it. But we all skated. We either skateboarded or we rode bikes. And make of that what you will. But I guess there's a reason that they both go hand in hand, because everybody's got the same experience, haven't they?
Yeah, they do seem to reflect. Yeah, they do seem to reflect each other quite a lot. The more we talk about that, they do seem. Yeah, that like you said, the whole ethic and DIY element, and the idea that you're doing it for the love of doing it. You're probably, I suppose, now is different, but you weren't going to get rich doing it.
Yeah,
You're doing a very niche thing that a very niche group of people.
There's only a handful of 11-year-olds that are going, I'm going to be a pro skateboarder. I think most of us will probably like, this isn't my job. This is just, you know, I'm never going to make a living out of this. It's just something I like to do.
Yeah. I think something sort of occurred to me is that a lot of the image is very similar. Like if you're walking, a lot of sort of the style between the people who were skating and the people who were listening to punk music and going to punk shows was very similar. It was, you know, torn jeans, and the jeans were torn because you fell off a skateboard, but they were, you know, it was the torn jeans, the baggy look. It's like the scrappy look is one of the best way to kind of sort of define it. And the images were very similar, very so closely aligned. You could look at somebody and go, that is somebody who's into punk and or skateboarding, and you know you're going to be right with either one of those guesses just looking at somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good. Like I was saying, back like the sort of more punk rock element of it, way back when would have been, you know, studded leather jackets and skinny jeans and things like that. You know, spiked hair and piercings, and you never really saw that with skateboarders per se. But when they crossed over, I suppose it's a lot to do with bands like Blink kind of wearing a lot of skate brands because they were skateboarders. So they were wearing skate brands, and then when their bands kind of explode into the mainstream, then there's all of a sudden there's thousands of people watching them on TV and things wearing this get-up, and they're going, oh fuck, they must skate because they're wearing that.
And I remember certainly back at the skate park, or we used to hang out at Helston Skate Park in Cornwall a lot of the time, And certainly back in the skate park, there was a very definite, substantial group of people that were all in the local punk bands and all the local skaters, and they'd all coalesce in the skate park. And I think kind of like, I think Jack, you and Nath were kind of like the epicenter of this, really, weren't you? Kind of how you looked at Bailey.
Nathan Metallic, he from Vales, childhood friends as well. Yeah, we probably were, because I mean, when we were playing in our band, you know, back in Cornwall when we were in college, and we were just like a really like, I think we were trying to be like a sort of ratty, like rancid, scar in tinged like street punk kind of thing, but we both had like Liberty spikes and mohawks, and I think Nate pierced his lip with a guitar string because he wasn't allowed to do it. But we weren't alone in that. You know, we used to go to the skate park. A bit like you were saying earlier, we all got on, but it was like there were different camps, and I think there was, even then, even if we were creating it, it definitely felt like skateboarding was part of the local punk rock scene. It felt like synonymous, you know.
Yeah, there was we used to have mass band practices in this little youth club. So there used to be about probably 4 or 5 bands with 3 or 4 members in each of them, and we all used to go to the same rehearsal space, and we would take it in turns to play a song or practice a song or write a song. Everybody would have their bike there or their skateboard there with them, because that's what they were doing afterwards or had been doing before. There would always be someone who would sneak some booze into it as well. Everybody was smoking, even though we were way too young to do so. But there was older kids there. You know, the oldest probably would have been about 17, and the youngest probably would have been about 13. So it's quite a wide age group, but everybody would egg each other on, because you were all in bands trying to play music, trying to make something work, no matter how rubbish you were at it. And I guess it's the same with being at a skate park and with the same group of friends, like egging each other on to do something. It's the same sort of scenario, isn't it? You're going to have it's the same sort of relationship, the same kind of group mentality, I suppose, even though skateboarding can be quite, you can do it alone. It's still based around going out with your friends and doing it.
It's quite easy, just even if you go out skating on your own, it is very easy to then come across a group of skaters and just kind of get absorbed into that group for the day. You know, you'll go out skate, you'll bump into some people you've never met before. Before you know it, you're sessioning the same ledge, you're sessioning the same spots. I remember certainly when me and Mikey went out in Penzance once and met a group of the local skaters. And Jack, you remember Daz and all that lot. We bumped into them, and we ended up going around all of Penzance, skating the school and everything. And skateboarding, you might go out and do it by yourself, but you are always part of a group. And 99% of other skaters will happily skate with you and bring you into that group, even if it's just for a couple of hours of the day.
Yeah. I think I mean when I was younger, I think I probably bumped into the 1% that weren't happy to hang around with me. But yeah, I remember not having a very good, not very good outlook on skateboarders that I didn't know. And I think it's probably because we were all a bit younger, and there was quite a lot of older kids. I suppose they were probably only about 17, 18 anyway, when we first started. And it was probably more of a Plymouth thing, just a bit rougher, bigger boys. That didn't like sharing around or whatever. But
100%.
As it's gone from the outskirts to people who were sort of more on the outskirts and people who were into skating back then, sort of the gatekeepers of skateboarding, as it were, it has come much more. As it's come much more into the mainstream, it's become much more acceptable to lots more people. So we're seeing people, we're seeing like 40-year-old new mothers start skateboarding, whereas that wouldn't have been a thing 20 years ago. Like we're seeing people picking up boards in their 50s and 60s because they saw somebody roll past and they wanted to give it a go. Those people are welcomed and accepted now, and it was definitely a lot more cliquey back then.
Cliquey. That's a bit like the punk rock scene.
Yeah. It's really hard to it's really hard to be critical of things that you like love and hold so dear.
It is.
So I feel like this with punk and skateboarding, where they're such a big part of who I am. They really are. There's nothing bigger in my life that has formed everything about me in terms of my friends and my personality. And it's really hard to look at that and see faults in it, especially as a product of that, lots of the things like you said about punk and skateboarding, the cliquiness, or at my core, I don't think that's right. But then similarly, I love the aesthetic of that. I love the kind of slightly, it sounds ridiculous because I'm as like smiley, happy person as there possibly could be, but I do gravitate towards that kind of the outlaw imagery of it, and the kind of
edginess.
The edginess and the like satanic imagery and just the ridiculous kind of baiting of society that exists in those things. I think that always really appealed to me, and those things probably are really off-putting to some people, but even now,
absolutely,
like, those are the things we've spoken loads. I won't dwell on it, but the companies that have that output and the bands that have that output are still the things that I will gravitate to, whatever else is going on.
Have you seen, Jack, when the two come together and you get those really cool, like there's a lovely set of Misfits decks, a really gnarly set of Misfits decks. Social Distortion came out with a range of decks as well. And some of the graphics that you get when the two come together, you get these really cool boards that you just don't want to skate. The kind of ones you just want to hang on your wall. And that kind of imagery works really well together because you can get a whole load of skate decks with these artworks from these punk bands. And the two just come hand in hand really nicely.
You had a deck recently that was heavy metal, as in the old TV show magazine. Pulp, fantasy show. Anyway, you had a heavy metal deck. And I was
still got it. That's
mad.
What I ride.
You right? Yeah, exactly. What the fuck?
I've to be honest, I board slid the shit out of that, lip slid the hell out of it, and I feel really bad about it now because it was a really wicked graphic, and I have somewhat ruined it. Not gonna lie, but it was a nice deck, man. I bought it to ride it.
I mean, isn't that the perfect sum-uppance of the two things being bashed together anyway? Because Jack, the drummer in Gunderson, who is also a 30-something-year-old skateboarder, has a deck on his wall at home that he made in D&T class in school. When we both went to the same school, he was a year above me, and in his D&T woodwork class, he carved a fishboard shape, stained it, and drew the NoFX logo on it, and he's kept it for all these years. That's to me, that's the perfect sumupance of, like, he loved NoFX, he loved skateboarding. He made a fishboard and stuck a NoFX logo on it.
Fucking
and now
beautiful.
it's on. And now he's in his 30s and it's stuck on his wall. Like,
that's perfect, isn't it? That's spot on. I love that.
That's magnificent. What an object. That's such an artifact of a period in time as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because it would have been 2005, 2004, 2005.
Some professional skateboarders have obviously grown up with this sphere of influence between the two subcultures and wear that on their sleeve. Like some, I'm sure we all know the names I'm probably referring to, but there are some individuals, professional skateboarders, who are very much rooted in the punk subculture. Are there any skaters or brands even that you particularly enjoy because of their association with punk?
Honestly, I don't think so. But thinking back, when I was younger, I was a big fan of Adio.
Okay.
The shoe company.
And I definitely had a handful of. I think there's a picture of me somewhere in my parents' house walking around Woodlands when I was about 10 in an Adio t-shirt. And I think I had a couple of Adio t-shirts, probably bought one or two pairs of Adio shoes. And I think the reason I did was probably because I saw some sort of band wearing an Adio t-shirt. And it's probably Blink, because they were probably sponsored by them. There was probably some horrible, awful corporate thing going on that we were totally unaware of at the time, that was forcing us all to wear these things, but it certainly worked to an extent, And then,
I still wear Vans.
Yeah, exactly. Don't we all? And aren't they the brand that is synonymous with punk rock? Because so many bands are sponsored by, not only do bands have a skate team, but that they have bands that they sponsor. They have celebrities that they endorse and give free stuff to.
Warped Tour?
Yeah, the Vans.
They
Warped
do.
Tour.
They do.
You know what?
Yeah,
that
Warped Tour, which is
event,
arguably the most evil event on the face of the earth.
It is, but then isn't that because I know there's so much wrong with it, but isn't that in a nutshell, if you wanted to sum up the kind of the music we have largely and talking about.
Yeah.
I guess that's it, isn't it? Skate punk. They had a big vert in the middle of it.
Yeah, and then the big companies latched onto that, and I suppose just sucked all of that. Sucked all the punk out of it. Yeah. Punk out of punk. Yeah, fuckers.
You know, I'd still love to have gone though.
Oh yeah, wouldn't we all? That's certainly at that age we absolutely would have done. Jack, I thought it's funny you mentioned sort of brands and people associated with skateboarding. We've managed to go 50 minutes now, and not a single person has mentioned Mike Vallely.
Mike V.
No,
yes.
Mike V.
Again, So Mike V, who had Mike V and the Rats, his own hardcore punk band, and is now the singer of Black Flag.
Yeah.
Yes, and he's in a couple of music videos, isn't he, for other bands? I can't remember any off the top of my head, but he's done. Oh, and he's in Paul Blart Mall Cop. When
most people know him from, I think.
When they break into the mall, it's the thugs are the skateboarders, aren't they? Or the thugs are the extreme sports people. I think one of them's on a BMX, one of them's on a skateboard. The one on the skateboard is Mike Vallely, and he's just ripping around this mall a bit like in the first Tony Hawk game.
Yeah,
I love Mike V. I'm sure that he's a scary dude. Yeah, I know as well. He's a professional ice hockey. Do you know he's an ice hockey player too?
I do. So,
He played for the Danville Whalers, and he got hired because he was at a Danville Whalers game, and he got angry with another fan, climbed over the rafters, and just got into a punch out with a fan from the other team. And the manager spotted him and thought, he's good at fighting. I'm going to get him on my ice hockey team.
Oh, man.
But on the flip side, nowadays, the only interviews he'll give are interviews about animal rights and veganism. He is a prolific vegan, and he is one of the few skateboarders now that proactively pushes the use of helmets on kids and skateboarding and the safety of kids and skateboarding. So while he has got that hardcore image, he's got that other side to him that actually is very kind of almost completely counter that. He swings both ways.
But you often find though that that's the case with those kind of subcultural things. I know it's not always, but I often think that if you get your anger out somewhere, like I've met some of the nicest people I've ever met through angry music and skateboarding. So do you think that's because you have an outlet to deal with that stuff that isn't outwardly aggressive?
Quite possibly.
He's probably a gentleman.
There's like Jamie Thomas and Zero.
Jamie Thomas, yes.
Yeah, Zero are known for being hard and fast skateboarders, and that kind of imagery of Zero is quite rooted in that as well. I guess I can't think of any other. Death Wish, I guess, but Creature. I think it's imagery over anything else. If someone was going to say the hip hop side of it, I would immediately think of DKG or Supreme. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the imagery that it's attached to, but then balls like Dustin Dolan.
Yeah, totally. But you know what? I think that's evolved in itself, because I think that, if you go back to the early days, it was probably like we spoke about Steve Cab earlier, and I think Bones Brigade and Christian Hoi Toi, I think they were really interested. I think that was very, like the start of that Southern California skateboarders listening to punk thing. But then I think that America, possibly, I might be speaking out of turn here, has moved away from that. But I think that Britain's picked up that mantle. Like now, when I think of British skateboarders and British skate companies, maybe more than the average skateboarder, that's now where I see the kind of, and I think it's more because of the DIY ethic and the imagery, like you said. But I think of, we've said it so many times, but I just think it rings so true. Like Death and Heroin, as two British companies, I think absolutely embody that skateboarding punk rock thing to a T. And the fact that they still use like analog cameras, and I know that there's an arrogance in that, and that would really piss people off. I love that it's so nasty looking, I love that.
But it's like, because the other end of the spectrum is people like Rob Dyrdek making millions and shamelessly making millions.
Street League,
over Street League, and there's brands like DC and stuff that have arguably kind of moved away from their skateboarding roots and really gone mainstream. I mean, more power to them if they found that gap in the market, they found that niche, and they got in there.
Still make a good shoe though. You know,
I guess they do. I mean, I used to. The best skate shoes I've ever owned were a pair of Globes way back when. Yeah.
Thing is, when you get R&D, you can make good shoes. Like when you can afford R&D, you can get really good equipment.
Oh yeah.
The thing is, like you mentioned. It's funny that you mentioned those two, because you mentioned DC and you mentioned Zero earlier as being that sort of punk aesthetic, and Jamie Thomas was really.
They're probably owned by the same person, aren't they?
Probably. I mean, Jamie Thomas was so protective of the imagery and the brand, that sort of hardcore imagery that Zero had, that he got Chris Cole out of his baggy, like bright yellow jeans in order to suit it. Like, you know, he made Chris Cole change his appearance to suit the Zero brand. And now you've got that same person, Chris Cole, who is now one of the poster boys of like Street League.
Absolutely.
And GoPro and Monster and all those things as well. So kind of going towards that. And Jack and I've mentioned this before, but it's really interesting to see people swing quite so lightly between the two.
Yeah, I like people who stick to their roots personally. I mean, all power to people like Neen Williams, who, you know, and who still pick up loads of sponsors of random companies. I mean, like he's a fucking bodybuilder now and picks up sponsors from like Huel and stuff. But fine, if that's what he wants to do. Fine, but I dig people like Lizard King and Rodney Mullen, who like Andrew Reynolds, who are kind of still doing it full time. It's still their job. It's still their main source of income. They're still filming parts. They're still doing their thing, but they're much more humble about it. Much more.
Yes.
I don't know. They've got a bit more grace to them.
Yeah, I always think with anything like that, music or skateboarding, it's a really horrible conversation to have, because, you know, I'm going to be the first to use the word sellout because we've all probably been avoiding it, you know. But like, it's a really like, you know, but it's a funny thing, isn't it? Because I don't personally take issue with people expand. I think what I take issue with is when they become beloved because of something and they abandon the thing that makes them stand out. I don't know. So it's like,
I agree.
I think you don't mind people finding success, but not at the expense. I mean, again, it's up to them, but you don't have to like it, you know. I suppose not at the expense of the reason you love them, you know. I remember seeing an interview with Tony Hawk on Pretending I'm a Superman, and it's fair play to him, you know. He was talking about someone calling him a sellout because he did a McDonald's advert.
Yeah, it's funny it's named after a punk song.
Yeah, right. And he said, like, I understand why they're angry or why they want to do it, but I love McDonald's. He said, I was a teenage boy when I did it, and I exclusively ate junk food. So, like, actually, like, those are your ethics, not mine, kind of thing. And I think I loved it. I mean, I don't love McDonald's, but I love Tony Hawk because, you know, that's, you know, that's his principles. That's fine. But however, I think I would be upset if like Mike V did a McDonald's commercial. That would feel like a very different thing because he would be giving up so much of what makes him him and why we love him.
Do you guys remember? I'm going off traffic here, but just while I remember it, because I know I wanted to bring it up. Speaking of punk and skateboarding. Now, I know a lot of people have got lots of opinions on whether or not Sex Pistols and Johnny Rotten are punk, and there's a whole argument around that. But to a lot of the UK, if you say the word punk, to most people in the UK who aren't really engaged in any other sort of cultures, if you say the word punk to them, they immediately think of the Sex Pistols and that kind of thing. Do you remember when Flip Sorry came out and they had Johnny Rotten doing the intros to all of the skaters?
Yeah, I remember that.
I can't say I do, but Jeff Rowley is you know, a skater. Flip for most of his career and bands for most of his career, and he's a Liverpudlian guy that is very outspoken about the type of music that he likes to listen to, type of music that he has in his parts. Like, yeah, he's a little punk rocker at heart, isn't he?
That was when John
and now he shoots clay pigeons in his fucking like massive.
Yeah, right. That was before the butter adverts, I think.
That was pre-butter adverts. Yeah, that's what I was going to say when you talked about like people selling out and stuff. Like that's the epitome of it, isn't it?
His pre-Winston Churchill looking days.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant.
But I mean, Sex Pistols were they were kind of a manufactured band, weren't they? They were put together by Steve McLaren to do exactly what they did, which was to cause fuss, help Vivienne Westwood sell clothes, and it's
it all ties back into this horrible thing of when you grow up, you realise that all of this stuff
you've been fucking had.
Yeah, you have been. Like, everything you love is a lie. Everything you love is a lie.
Like if you told 11-year-old James the truth about Avril Lavigne, he would have been devastated, man.
Oh God, yes. Sorry. When was the last time? This is for both of you, any of us. You heard a punk song on a skate video that really got you going. When was the last time you heard one and you thought, yes, this is for me?
I've got to confess, I haven't watched a skate video all the way, like sat down and watched it in a long time. But I couldn't name you the songs. But the last time I actually watched a skate video and went, "This is really cool," was a long time before this renaissance of skateboarding in my 30s. It was back. It was probably when I was. Probably stopped skateboarding when I was about 19 or 20, and it was probably when I was about 25 or 26 that I found the Black Label Blackout video. And I watched that, and I was just like, yeah, that's what I used to like about skateboarding, not the flashy bullshit videos that I think I was probably seeing at the time, and kept on seeing skateboarding like big competitions. So you will about the street league competitions and Trans World Skateboarding and all of that. I think Black Label Blackout was I watched it and went, that's what I remember skateboarding feeling
the theme song to that is first of all, thank you so much. I forgot about that film. I used to love that film. I got that free with Document magazine when I got a subscription to Document.
Document. Yeah.
And it was unbelievable.
Magazine.
It was so good because it was always it was just a little bit less flash than Sidewalk. It always felt like you were just that little bit. Anyway, I used to love that, and the music was the theme. Like they kept coming back to a theme, if I remember correctly, and it was Blackout by the Dropkick Murphys. And,
okay. I don't remember.
Banging song. Absolutely banging song, and I think that's how I discovered that band as well through.
Okay, yeah.
I actually can't remember any specific ones. I remember watching Damage, which I think was Think Skateboards. That was a wicked video. That had a Dead Kennedy song in it that I thought was really good, and I can't remember exactly what song it was. Yes, I can. Holidays in Cambodia by Dead Kennedy.
What a song!
Think Skateboards Damage. That was an absolutely cool part, and that I was watching that going, yeah, this is great. I want to go skate.
Man, what a song! Dead Kennedy's. I think
it's not on a skate video. It probably is somewhere, but Bad Religion, the song that's on Tony Hawk's 2, I think it is.
Bad Religion, You.
Oh, You, yeah. What a song.
Bad Religion, yeah.
I think every time I hear it, I automatically think about being cross-legged, sat on the floor playing a PlayStation 1 in my friend's house. And immediately playing that game and then wanting to go out and skate. So I think I would associate that sound with
they are the epitome, I think, of that sound, aren't they? Bad Religion.
I think, and I don't think they'd want to be, apart from maybe I think Jay Bentley does skateboard, but the rest of them are very, Greg Grafton's
sensible.
Obviously a very sensible man and does holds PhDs and does lectures to kids who don't know who Bad Religion are and don't care who Bad Religion are.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But Ian, this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
All right, Brad, lightning round. Answer as quickly as you can. You ready?
Go.
Tony Hawk or Christian Hoi Soi?
Tony Hawk.
No Effects or Bad Religion?
No Effects.
Bad Religion.
Black Flag or Dead Kennedys?
Dead Kennedys.
Thrasher or Transworld?
Thrasher.
Punk or metal?
Punk.
Can't answer.
Zero or Elephant?
Zero.
Death or heroin?
Death.
Rum or beer?
Rum beer.
Beer.
Jamie Thomas or Mike B?
James Thomas.
That's all I've got, and I love the hesitancy, James. That was brilliant. Several occasions I heard your voice.
If you love skateboarding but you're just not very good at jumping up and down on your favorite piece of wood,